So go through that. I put up a little deck. And we'll kind of walk through how Sourcetree is. We're just going to use Sourcetree because it's free and it's visual, and it's just really easy for somebody to get in and do something if they have really no idea versus the terminal. We go through the terminal commands, and half this room and half people in the call will just turn off their brain and walk out the door. So there's no point in doing that. If you want to use terminal for what we're doing, you're very capable of doing it, and there's a whole internet full of training for it. Let's get started. So this is just for any skill level. Everybody should be able to do this at a 3-year-old, KWALL employee and up. And what we'll look at is just basics, the definition and terminology, where the SSH key is, setting up a Git repository for ourselves, and we're going to do that as kind of a workshop, and how and when to use it, and when not to use it, and then kind of our hosting. So we have our dev, Pantheon, and Aqua will focus on. There's other situations like Aloni or these other off cases. We're not going to focus on those because it's a once in a while kind of thing, although it should follow the same idea. Okay. So before we begin, we got breakfast burrito thanks to Renee's suggestion. We're ready to have a lot of awesome fun, and do we all have Sourcetree installed? Yeah. Woo! Yes. Okay, cool.
I have it installed, but I didn't log in yet. I don't know the login.
If you installed it, you had to create your own login. We'll go through that a little bit, but you can get ahead of us if you just want to register with Atlassian, is what it'll ask you to do, and skip some stuff. So
you can skip the setup. Like there's like a box that pops up, and there's like an option on the lower left to skip setup, because we did that with Alex, and it was fine.
Right. So what is it? It's a version control system. So if you think about how you go into Google Docs or even a document nowadays, and you can see the revision handling or even the node, and you see, oh, well, somebody changed X, somebody changed Y. That's all it's doing is tracking a whole bunch of files in a folders, changes, and stuff that's happening and recording it. It doesn't do much else than that. If you think about it as, if you really wanted to break it down as something simple, as when we do perhaps a statement of work with a customer, or you wrote that report in high school or college, and you said, oh, this is the final one. You wrote it in the document that _final, and then you got some feedback, and then you called it _final V2, and then V3, and then V3 with some changes, and then V4. That's what it's doing. It's just keeping that as a linear approach. It's changing it as it goes, but keeping the same name, so you always have final. If you really think of it as a simple idea, it's just keeping the same document name and tracking changes throughout. It changes to files, additions and deletions of files and folders, that whole tracking of things. And it doesn't store, for our case, the database or the files stored by the customer that's uploading things in the content management system. Why? Because the database changes, the files change. They may upload or replace a file if we output, because what we use Git for is to update the code that happens on the system. If we had all of that in there, which we could, it would overwrite everything on production. So it would have to be this flat thing where they would have to put everything they'd ever do up into Git. We'd have to store it there and then push it live as a thing that would never change. If we put it up and we put all those users files into Git, then we release the next version of what we were doing. We would either have to manually delete all the files out of there and put their new ones in, or end up having to overwrite them with what exists. So if they uploaded a new bread image for Bimbo bread, it would be gone. So that's why we don't put them into Git. Does that make sense? So why not just upload it into a directory and update that stuff manually? Just smash it up in there. Well, that's what we used to do with our old KWALL devs. Everybody work into a shared thing where they'd all log in. And what would happen? Things would get deleted. You'd overwrite somebody's work. We'd do rework. Things would go missing. No one really knew what was happening. There was no tracking. So then you'd go, Sean, are you working on that? Oh, yeah, I'm working on that YouTube video. And there would be nothing happening and no tracking of that. So you didn't really know what happened. And then every time somebody had to come in and take over for Sean's work that he didn't finish, it would just be a, let's figure out where to start from ground one. Right now in Git, I can see what happened, and I I was gonna do exactly the same thing, and in the old way, we would have clobbered each other, done the same work twice, probably slightly differently. His would have been blown away by my changes, and we all would have just suffered from lack of communication. Right.
Before you could see.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And,
So you just happen to like check it, right?
well, so I'll go through some of that, but like on like Acquia or whatever, I was gonna go help set up the change from PHP version. And when I went in to pull down, because every time you kind of get into a repository, you kind of pull it down, you can see there's some changes. I just looked and I see Tim did something like a minute ago. Exactly what I was gonna do. I didn't have to go and Slack, hey Tim, are you working on this? Hey, what's happening? He's already on it. Like, I don't even have to talk to him at this point. I know what he's doing. So it's really helpful to see that, where I would have totally, if you really think about man hours, we would have doubled the man hours, maybe tripled it by not really communicating well. And even if we didn't have Git and just that ease of use of visibility, we would have added more man hours in just the idea of me asking him if he's working. So that's super great. We can also clobber things together and merge them together, which we'll look at. And we can automatically deploy stuff with these webhooks or other systems. So when something happens, it just automatically does something. So we'll show that too. Here's some easy Git terminology we're going to go through. But just to think about it, we use GitLab, our own little system down here. But if this is our KWALL or Acquia, this is just general terminology ideas we're going to talk about. It's just pushing code, pushing it down into the cloud, the fluffy cloud that will save that change, pulling, getting it from the server, or requesting it, which is just asking about what it is. So just something to think about. It's just you're either pushing it off the cliff to the server or pulling it back up. Here's some really fun terminology. So everything in there is a file. If we talk about databases, in reality, a database server is a file with table storage into files. Like everything in a computer is a file of some sort. It's not in that. But everything is stored as a file. So you couldn't technically store a database in here or something. It would just be a server full of files and tables of information. But a picture is a file, a piece of code in PHP is a file, a CSS file is a file. Everything's a file. So a blob is what they store that stuff as. That keeps the timestamp and a little bit other stuff you'll see. There's a thing called a tree, which is kind of that directory. So the folder on your computer would be like a tree. I made a folder called Kevin's folder, and then I put stuff in it, and then a folder underneath that. That's what they're considering kind of a tree. These are kind of things you just have to kind of absorb because you'll see them, not something you'd have to memorize. But when we do talk about commits, that's us like segmenting a change in code. And we're going to see that together. A commit is just saying, I made changes and I want to store them as a thing. And then I made more changes. I want to commit that later. So we're going to go through that. A tag is a container or essentially you can think of it as a bookmark in the process of saying, this is one thing that I want to keep reference of, and we're going to go through that in more detail. Head is things that are in my local. So I have a head, just think about that. The computer doesn't. Remotes is the server, so or GitLab or something like that is the remote thing. And then stash is just stuff you want to hide. And then meta is like the details, the username, what happened, things like that. And then branches are essentially a copy of the source code. We're going to go through some of that in detail. Anybody have anything you want to add to that? No? Okay. So here's really a basic idea of what Git is. So we have our server. So for us, that's GitLab. For Acquia, that'd be Acquia's Git. For Pantheon, that's Pantheon's Git. Whatever that is, that's the server side of that. And then our local does everything else. So we're talking about, somebody says cloning in some nerdy way, a branch, working files. We talk about pulling it over, like we saw that little cloud guy. It all kind of comes to local. And really the only time it goes back is when you push code up. So we're looking here, if we pull this down, we're going to do that here in a bit. We'll pull down the code to our working. do some stuff, and then we'll add it to a commit to the branch that we have locally, and we'll push it up to the server that just keeps track of it. Sometimes you'll see stuff where we're talking about fetching or resetting a branch. That's kind of a little bit more advanced of just getting certain branches lined up on your computer, but these two things are the most important. You're gonna almost always just pull code down, and that's what Sourcetree is gonna do for you easily. Or commit it, add it, commit it, and push it up. That's the two things you need to know happen. And then there's merging, which we'll talk about. So again, with branches, these are straight up copies of code. So if I want to go in, which we'll exit for a second and look at my little example project, which we'll do together here in a minute. Here's an example of two branches. I have our master branch, which is the one always created when we create a Git repository, like we're going to do in a minute. And I made one called another branch just for fun, just to have two. And if I look at, we'll talk about this a little bit more, how I changed some stuff. I started out with this HTML page, and it looks like this. Landing page I just found that doesn't do anything neat. And then I said, okay, I'm going to branch that off, and I'm going to change the title to something else. And then I'm going to change it to something else again. I'm going to follow my new branch called another branch up this tree. And that one, now I'm going to change it again. But on the original one, somebody else changed it over here. You can see how it's essentially two copies of the file going off into two different directions. And so when you see that, like maybe there's a dev branch and a production branch and a staging branch, it's just total copies of code going to different places. They don't diverge. The one won't affect the other one unless you merge them together and work on that. Outside of that, you can see this is a good example of a tag. A tag is a point in time, regardless of when that is. I tag specifically that branch with example tag just for fun. So when we talk about deploying stuff to Acquia and it automatically creates a tag that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, it's just making a copy of the code that you can't change. A tag is the thing you can't change in time, where a branch you can, and keeping it there. The reason they're doing that automatically when you drag and drop code there is why, so you can't screw it up. So once it hits production, that tag is a point in time that you can't change. And so that production code will just work. And then sometimes we cheat and we create a branch and then we put that on there instead. But that's because we can modify the code. The reason they want to do it in tags is that it's unmodifiable, and so that's really easy for you to track down a problem, right?
Each one of those dots is a commit, right?
Right. Yeah, every single one of these is a commit. We'll do this
On the master branch.
This one is a master branch, and the merged one I created called another branch. Yeah.
The red is all the same branch.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And it'll be different colors. It'll go like that. If we go back up to this, here's an example of some crazy, insane branching fake thing that looks like a picture.
Yeah.
But yeah, that might be confusing. A bunch of types and scary stuff. Here's a great example I found on the internet of octopus branching. So here's a great way to look at it. So here's the master branch that you always have. It's really fuzzy. And at some point in the future, this software octopus needs to have heart glasses and a cowboy hat. So I said, Sean, go make me heart glasses. And I said, Mel, go make me a cowboy hat. And so if they both went and made a branch, they would have done that. This is Mel's, that was Sean's branch. Sean's working on adding those glasses. And Mel's over there making a cowboy hat, and they don't really have to connect to each other at all, but at some point they're gonna, I want to hold it. So if you think about that in a practical case, you know, he doesn't have to ask, well, is your hat gonna cover my glasses? What's gonna happen with this? He can just do his job and then put it back into the master branch. And then, you know, once we're done, we get both things smashed together. If there was a conflict, that's what we talk about merging, is kind of looking through the code and think, oh, well, move this up or move that down, or I wrote the same thing, I'll just take this one out. And that's why sometimes developers hate merging, because it's a little bit of work, but we'll go through that. Does that make sense on how branching kind of could work?
Yeah, I think so. You have to, both of them have to commit their changes for that.
They would have to merge them together with master branch.
At
to
what
connect.
point, like in the other graph? Is that?
So in the one that I have, it hasn't been merged yet. So
Or like up in the slideshow? Oh, never mind. Oh, yeah.
So if you look here, we'll look at a merge. So what we'll do is we'll check out, we'll have two branches and we'll put them together. So for example, we'll get into this a little bit more detail of how to do that. But if we wanted to put this guy back in with this one, I was changing the same piece of code. But if it was two things or two different pieces of code, it would kind of magically put it back into master. Sometimes you don't have to put it back in. Like, let's say we have FastApp 2.1.5 release or something that's just running that Coral project. Does it have to go back into master? No, it's its own copy of code. It could run forever out in that branch. It doesn't actually have to come back. But in software best practices, if we were building one thing, it's best at the end of the day to bring it back in as the be-all, end-all master copy of the stuff, right? Otherwise, it'd be a useless master. What's the point of it if you're never going to use it? But there could be times where you don't want to do that, right? There's a version 1 of something. There's a complete version 2. Hungry Howie's is that right now. It's like version 1 of this original site is on the master branch and it's not been changed. And when we did updates to that while we were working for like a year on the next version, they were totally going a different direction. And we still had to keep this one going to go live and change stuff and do development work on that while we're working on this other one. And maybe at some point we'll put it back over and the new version 2.0 will be the master branch from that point moving forward. Because we could do that and then move on. But it doesn't even have to. It doesn't matter as long as we're aware of what code we're changing. They're all different copies.
Yeah, like Pomona's like two different branches for
Right.
like the longest time.
Right, and does it matter? No. You just have to know which one you're working on.
ECR's like that too, I think, right? Remember how we couldn't figure out what branches
Yeah.
we were working on?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the hardest part, is figuring out where to do your job. So that's a piece of that for sure.
When you think of like dev staging production, those are each running on a different branch or tab.
Right.
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 They aren't always though.
Well, there's always exceptions to the rule. So there's always a reason to not be exactly what should happen. So this is all best case. So sometimes you'll run into something, at least you know what probably should be set up. And if it's not, you're aware it's not, right? So a tag is like we were talking about, it's a snapshot in time in that branch. It's a tag. It cannot be changed. Again, to Fernanda's point, there is exceptions to that rule. You could probably do it if you're an awesome developer in E, but you can't. So let's just, for the base level of everyone just being on the same page, it's a thing that you cannot change. So when we go on to, like, Aqua is a great example because they live on tags on that system. When you see one deployed that says the date and stuff, we'll go through that. It's not like you could just wing in there and throw some code in and fix something right away. You would have to deploy out a new copy of that, a new tag, drag it back over, update that code. It's not difficult to do. And tags don't cost money. So you could just tag things as much as you want. Yeah, you could just keep adding tags. Who cares, right? So this is an example of a tag on Aqua, actually, I think, where, yeah, there's an Aqua connector. We did some work. We added some memcache, blah, blah, blah. At some point, we probably dragged something to staging on there, and it names it by the date on the tag, so you kind of know when it happened. And we dragged it to staging maybe at this point, or production, and it tagged it.
Do we have like a naming system for the tags? Is that what we do the releases with?
We can. We don't have rules right now, but I think it'd be nice to have that. But a good general rule of thumb is if Aqua is doing it, probably do it too. They spend $1 trillion making things work for themselves and 1 million other people. So they use it by date.
Yeah.
But you could also call it release or something, 102, and maybe a date. It's kind of nice to know it's on a date. That way you know when it happened, on SSU, I think we're doing that with everything. It's like, okay, well, Aqua's already running down this list of dates, we'll just add it by date, maybe a little bit more information if we have it. That way too, if I'm like, holy crap, I just woke up in the middle of the night, the client calls at, and it's the 4th, we moved this live on the 3rd, I can see that tag deployed. And maybe I bring it back to the first one and just check it out, see if there was a problem with what we did. And then we'll just take that code, go reverse it back in time, deploy the old time one. And so that's kind of nice. If you wanted something in between here deployed, you would have to branch that off probably, or figure out, check that out, and like work out how to do that. We'll look at that a little bit, but we won't go over that too much today. That would be like figuring out how in the middle of those tags to take half of it. You probably go back or pull out a commit, check out a branch, blah, 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 no one cares. So we'll go through that a little bit, but that is really how things work in terms of having specific things in code. With Sean and working on the template project and his current project, he can tag where he's left off, but notably that's only what's in code he's changed, not the database, not the file. That you would have to save separately for that tag, maybe put in a backups folder, store them somewhere, to make sure that you had a copy of all the things we would use for that experience you would have at that point.
I have to make sure we're not getting confused with the branch tag. So the branches what they actually look like, the snapshot in there.
Right, exactly. So this is kind of a crazy looking tree. So if you think about this, this would be the tree trunk of commit that's going on master, and then maybe somebody branches off and works on a custom module for implementing migration. And these are all the commits going on with that, and maybe there's a tag that just reminds you, hey, at this point we started this project with this release thing. Maybe some of these branches come out and then they go back in like they merged, and some go off to space. So this could be a real use case example of a larger software development, where maybe everybody branches off on something, works on a specific module that doesn't have an impact on someone else, and then puts it back in with everybody else's stuff. And at the end, the master branch is our development process. That's a very traditional software approach to something. Merging is something that people have voiced concern of being comfortable with, and so I think it's important to point out that once that branch comes back in, or some code is conflicting with something else, it says, hey, you effed something up. And it's not really that you screwed it up, it just doesn't know what to do. It's pretty smart about knowing if maybe you wrote something in the same file as someone else and it doesn't matter, and it just puts them together. It says, cool, there's two different things, totally different code, but it doesn't conflict with each other, but sometimes it does. So like in this kind of ugly example here, somebody wrote this programming code, and same with here. Two people wrote two different things, and it doesn't know who's right. So at that point, a human has to get involved, and that's what we call merging, is it'll give you something that says, here's your copy, and here's the other copy of whatever you're trying to put together. And there's the middle. So it'll actually, in the file, store this, and you have to physically go in there and find this arrow thing equals that arrow thing, and then decide which one's right and clean up those notes. You clean this out, clean that out. Let's say this one's right. I would just delete this whole thing and this, and save it, and then Git says, neat, thanks for that, and then just continues on after you commit it. If you don't do that, then your code doesn't work because it can't program. The program can't run with junk in there, so it'll fail. So it does that on purpose. You will go fix your stuff, and it doesn't just run along. So we got Sourcetree. I think everybody's got that. Did everybody set up an SSH key? I know, Natasha, we're going to probably need to help you out if you haven't gotten to that point. And then we're going to log into Git. So this is going to be our workshop. So everybody wants to get on our Git, log in. Renee, do you want to help Natasha get an SSH key in there?
Sure.
And then we'll kind of get started from there. I'm going to put this in our Slack. Download. That link should give you a little cheesy website, index page, and some stuff. Looks like this. Once you're on Git, grab that file if it'll let you. It'll let you go back up. Just click on download on the top right.
New design direction. Here we go.
It'll take a few minutes to get that going. If you want to get ahead, well, why don't we wait until everybody's kind of ready?
I did that download.
That's it. Yeah, the index page.
Maybe able to download it. Click on that dot.
We're gonna make website.
Or right next to the sign in button. Can you download it?
No, it shouldn't. Sign in, maybe I will. Oh, we all do the same one.
So everybody gets to make a website today. We're all web developers. Whatever you want to do. So in the top right, if you click on that link for me, you'll get a download press file that has CSS, jQuery, and HTML page, real basic stuff.
You download. Yes, you're good.
Do you want us to pull down from GitLab too?
No,
No.
we're gonna create our own. So in here we've got our style. We've got some JavaScript for you looking at analytics. That's just gonna make it look shiny. And here's our template site that has nothing in it. Some pricing. Let me know when Natasha's caught up so we don't. Everybody logged in our GitLab? Yeah, okay. So what we can do while you're doing that is you're gonna wanna create a new project. We're gonna just create one and go ahead and put it in your own user group. You might have the KWALL group, anything like that. And you can name it whatever you want. I don't really care. We're gonna probably delete it later, or you can keep it just for fun. I'm gonna call mine example project October 4th, 2018. That's the description. This is not training. Visibility, you can make it visible by just you, the public, or internal. We're just gonna go with internal, which means everybody can do it. And we're not gonna initialize it with a README because we want to use that folder we just created, an existing thing, to create a project with.
You want us to do that right now?
Yeah. What's Natasha doing with it? Okay.
Oh, crap.
Well, we'll wait here.
Oh, so it needs to be like dash stuff, like a machine name, just lowercase.
Yeah, one up there, yeah.
Stop getting ahead, Misha.
Am I developer yet?
Cheese, eggs, oyster.
Potentially, I think.
No, I'm not gonna give you the answers to my test.
Not trying to cheat, right, okay? She already has an assistant. She was. And we need around days.
She already has one, yeah, but she's both have
You could just remove it and start over again. If you can get that far. You go to the very bottom.
No such problem.
Like, geez. CS is totally readable.
It's like, I prefer to read it like this, actually.
Yeah.
This is my preferred way.
Yeah, who needs line breaks? Like, indenting? Get out of here.
Amateur move.
Those beginners. Well, sort of. It's like how we have like a GitLab, there's GitHub thing, and you can have like a public like GitHub thing, and like push and merge to, and there's something really similar to Sourcetree for.
But you want to make it public so they can connect?
You have to pay money.
Hey, Alex,
Like,
I sent over the
through
chart.
GitHub for their free thing, like every.
Rancho.
Yeah.
If you pay,
So they had their city hall meeting and got approved last night without comment. They
then
do wet
it's
signatures,
price.
so they're sending it back old school, like actual pen. They don't do digital.
I know.
I was about to reach out to
Yeah,
them.
because we
Yeah,
pay or
forget that.
like GitLab like this stuff.
I haven't yet. Oh, yeah. I think we should have probably put there.
No comment as well.
I don't know why I included that. You know, these, freaking quantum coders used to always send it over like this.
They minify it?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, like, I mean, I feel like they always come with two versions.
I
Like,
remember me and Abel would always try to go through and we're just like, I mean, he went through one time and like, he had it like separated manually. Like a nightmare.
There has to be like an automated way to do that.
Right? I think there probably
There's
is.
gotta be a thing you can, yeah, if you Googled unminify, I'm sure there's.
Oh, for sure. There's no way that they have.
That does, that's such, I feel like that'd be an easy programmatic thing to do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Natasha, let us know when you catch up and create your own project in our GIT. And then we'll go through the rest of it. Okay. Have her in the terminal, just type the word GIT to make sure her GIT, make sure that can be done. Everybody else created their project. Cool. We got on a page that looks just like this, right? Tells you there's nothing in it.
Yep.
Says some weird stuff about readmes and all that. But you look down here, it gives you some shortcuts on how to set up a project. And we'll circle back on this for Natasha if she needs them. But what we're doing is not creating a new repository. We just created one, but we're not creating a blank one to do whatever we want in. We have an existing thing that we want. And we have, or we don't have an existing repository. This would be like if we were adding it from something we got from someone else. We're in the middle. We want to have our existing folder created in our repository so we can make changes and stuff will happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go into your terminal window. So that's under application. If you don't have it up, utilities, and there's one called terminal. We're going to get real nerdy. If you want, you can open up a new window, cool color. You can go ocean, go graph. None of them really matter, except it just gives you some
look like a real hacker.
Oh, yeah, you can go with the new window of, what's the other one that's
Yeah.
anything you want, we'll do kind of for fun moment.
Yeah.
Now you can look like a crazy hacker.
Sometimes I sit there and just be like,
So, what we're gonna do
denied, no,
is, most likely it's downloaded your stuff into a downloads folder, right? Into your stuff. So follow along with me and just type CD capital download, type down and press tab. It'll probably take you somewhere like that. Right. And then if you type CD, change directory, I think it's called, what is that thing called? Example site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it should say, I'm just gonna go to something, example dash site or something like that.
So go to CD download.
Perfect. So now you're in the downloads folder.
Would you download that folder to your desktop or your downloads directory?
Oh, the drop of this thing?
Yeah.
Example.
Go ahead, unzip it. Or
It only does one thing at a time, so it can't do anything.
desktop. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So go
Sometimes if you press up
CD.
before you even finish
So
it.
you're in CD downloads. Let's go to. You want to go to your desktop?
Well,
it'll tell you
sample project. CD example.
Right there, top. Go ahead and enter. So now you have that
Example.
I'm inside of this now.
You're inside of the desktop.
Okay.
So you have
Files are in the
So yours, mine will look a little different. If you type ls, once you get into your example site, it should have, not what I have in there, but it should have a text file
and then it lists out the folder to that first level.
So you're there.
That's a good way to, like, if you go into downloads, if you
You want to go ahead and
whatever it is, it'll pop up with every
example dash site.
Space.
Example dash site.
So here you like to
Change directory. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and enter, and then we're gonna be inside there. Yeah.
Cool.
Once you've got to that, we're just gonna follow what
this way to like go all the way back.
this says in terms of existing folder. You already went to a folder. So just take each one of these lines, follow along as you get in it, hit enter in your little terminal. This whatever it says, enter. This whatever it says,
Open
enter.
the web page.
This whatever it says.
Yeah. So you're gonna start with that. So copy paste that. Line by line, you're gonna do that. Yeah.
You do the whole line.
Again here, just to make sure.
Right.
Go ahead, hit enter.
After each line. Each one.
Even in here.
On the terminal.
I can just copy paste that one.
So you can type in there, yeah, so hit enter. Interesting, it's solid, yeah.
Basic.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you
It's
want.
gonna take a while, but yeah, sure.
I want you to recognize this.
Oh, yeah.
You know what they do? No, do you care?
I keep going.
Yeah, well, this thing has to finish first.
Stuff. And then if you refresh your page on your system, on the web browser, you should see that you have a file system, so you're actually connected to.
Is that finished?
Yes.
So yeah, typing git in it again. Space in it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Wait, what? Didn't finish? Alex has installed like Xcode and stuff.
Yeah, mine's
Yeah,
the same.
that might happen, but that's good, I mean, yeah.
Okay,
do
it's still
it.
downloading, okay.
And Natasha's probably at the same stage, so you guys will catch up here, I think.
So here, look, on the side of that directory example site.
So while they're setting that up for the people that don't have, it, that means you basically didn't have some of the Git goodness that you need.
already did Git init. So I'm gonna
We'll
copy
come
this
back
one.
to you guys. You guys just get that installed and go through that stage. For the people that
Next one.
have that done and have their repository and they see files, and then after that point, go ahead into your source tree, which would look something similar to mine, and choose that existing local repository and go find that directory that you just were in. It's probably under your downloads, like you have example site, and then it just open, not that one.
So just start copy paste, start with giving it copy paste.
Yeah,
one
yeah.
Space,
No,
including this
Oh,
one.
Yeah, include
So-
It's only a command.
Yeah, you hit enter each time.
Because you are seeing the list items of that directory.
Now you're
Oh,
You just think of it like your Finder is doing all of that in a visual.
the history.
So you just want that to say open,
Originated that,
because you want them to pull
the files you got in the directory.
Oh,
He's just got
Okay,
every
gotcha.
project known to man.
Yeah, I've got a lot.
Start here.
Yeah, that one.
So once you do that, we'll kind of hold and make sure we all catch up to the same time. But you should be able to see your initial commit, which has an index file, a CSS file, and 3 different jQuery JavaScript files.
Yep.
And what we're going to do, and you can use any text editor you have on your computer, is just modify some of the index HTML files. So if you're in here and you see it, you can just click show in Finder,
Source tree.
and you
Scan
can
and
edit
directory.
that with
We're gonna find that example
any
folder. So
blue
that
text editor that pops up. If you'd like to use some more cool coding ones that are not just Coda, there's one called Sublime Text you could download someday, Text Wrangler,
and repository.
there's one called Atom. That'll do anything, or on your computer that's probably just text edit.
Click it.
You can just use that. It's all just text.
And then when you click on history, you'll start to see.
We're gonna just modify the file so that you can see it changing and commit it back up to your repository. Okay. You got here where you saw so that you have your commit, right? And you have your files that are committed.
Yeah.
You get to there.
Mhm.
You get there. You get
okay.
So there's.
Okay.
So here has the index. Say,
Gosh, how we doing over there remotely?
and it'll take you to that exact file.
Under download.
Yeah, so then if you, right click on. Open with.
Okay. Maybe a few hours. What we'll do is, I guess we'll have people lag behind. So how are you guys doing, Alex and Brad, in terms of spelling it? You're good?
All there.
I've been helping.
Taking forever.
Oh, yeah.
You're in a project,
It's
and all that.
On where you are.
You guys are where I'm at. Brad, are you kind of where we're at?
I'm all right.
Following along on my.
Okay.
We're good.
So everybody, I think, is at this point where they've got their source tree where they can see their stuff, and we're there. Then you could go click on index down here in the bottom left. So just to give you a heads up of how this works on the history tab here, it tells you what's gone on. It tells you the branches, if you have that, and you have branches, it would tell you the tags, and it would tell you what's on the server. 2 branches. Sometimes we'll just have 1 branch checked out, so you should just be master. And maybe, or like on our Acquia or some crazy stuff we've got, you see like 15 other branches, 1 million other tags on this remote, whatever. So that's just stuff to kind of play around in, but down at the bottom, you get to see the files that have been modified at the point you're clicking above. So you can see how it changes on mine, which we're gonna do in a second. From I gave it everything, plus signs mean new. So then I modified something, yellow. And maybe if I would have removed something, it would have been like a purple minus. But it tells you exactly what changed at that time. The only things it's going to show you in that bottom left is things that have changed at the point of commit. It's not going to show you the whole thing. So for us, go to that initial commit, choose your index.html file, and hit show in Finder. So it'll just open your window for you, make it easy. Go ahead and open that with like your Chrome.
Can you right click on it? So open and double click. Sure, open current version.
So in Chrome, we're gonna just look at it to look at it. So you can see the cool landing page.
Alright, so
Click the editor. Can you go back to your desktop? Go to that example
Yeah,
site.
go and right
Sourcetree,
click that.
or
So
folder.
we do the finger click.
Go to the
it.
folder.
Open it with Chrome.
I think it was like
You can see in your
which one
browser,
that
you're now
you're such a good coder.
locally hosting this file.
Great design too.
And then go back to that
I like
folder, and then
you can close that. Yeah, you can close this guy. Tap exit.
right click on it again, and then open with
Open it.
code as. So go.
So we're gonna edit this file.
I don't think it is.
It'll
Go back to the folder.
it'll
We're gonna right click on it instead.
buy it.
Choose like edit, text edit or something. And with text edit.
Yeah, I do.
Sure.
And for us who don't have text editor like Atom or anything like that, you're very capable of
Sure.
downloading it for free.
Change something, anything.
But
Add
just
garbage
use
text
any
to
text
your name, please.
editing system you can for today. We don't really care if it's the right HTML, we don't care what you do to this thing, if you destroy it, it's your copy, who cares? So we're gonna play with it a little bit. So you're gonna have this, and I'm gonna just do it in the Atom editor.
You should see the change.
You're gonna have this, and you're gonna have this on your
Can you
computer.
see that? Undo the changes?
We're gonna
That's change.
try to just take this landing page that we started
The
about,
change.
go back to your editor, just go find that, probably about halfway down or a quarter down, find line 50, and I've got this cool fireworks stuff.
Save it. No,
You wanna just-
I don't know what that
Go ahead and change
Don't worry.
whatever you want.
No, that's later. This is just it.
You can close that one out now. You can just type exit,
And then save it, just save the file.
exit, enter. Yeah. And then you close it.
Not on here, just-
So if you want to, theoretically,
File
you could
save.
just delete everything.
Where do you
Like,
save it as a
oops,
web?
I actually deleted the whole website, but you
You just save it
Here.
straight up. Save it back to the file you opened.
show up there.
If you go to your web browser and refresh that,
But you can always undo it.
you'll see your
Just
changes.
doing.
Right, so now you're a developer, and you're locally creating a HTML page. This is the most basic of basics, this is all we do every day.
Actually.
If you go to your source tree while we're playing in that, you're gonna see it says uncommitted changes, and actually points out what you changed.
So I
know
actually
it's a
went
bit crazier to
website.
depend on
Oops,
what
my bad.
you see, but
You hit reset. And it's all
there you
good.
go. So you change the line from red to green.
So he's just
You
editing.
need a better text editor.
So here's saying like these are files that were all added, right? Because that was the first thing that you added.
I mean,
Those are the lines that you added. But now if you go back to the text editor, you can change whatever you want.
Sure.
Oh, this. Let's close that one.
How are y'all doing on that?
Reopen that again.
We're behind.
Okay. Like literally you can destroy this thing, as long as you save the file, so it shows a change, that's all the goal is, not to really win here on being a web project.
Get that out of here.
My text editor.
So just rename stuff, whatever you want. Doesn't matter.
This is really dangerous.
And save it.
Hit save, yeah.
That's the, like, get it.
And then you'll see, you just open it.
It's like this octopus cat. There's like some kind of story behind it.
Well, it's all developed out over there, you guys?
I'm good.
Renee, you good? No? So, okay, what do we need to do?
I'm lost.
Let me help.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I just been looking at it for a while.
You have your text edit open?
Is this the Wi-Fi?
Because my computer's just so that
So open the example site and text edit.
Command.
When's the last time you started?
We started like 3 days ago. Yeah, and I do it this time. Yeah, but we just
Mine was like 3 weeks ago that I received.
Oh.
It's been a while.
But I don't know.
You do not, okay.
Yeah.
So, go to open source.
Make someone.
Is that what that's?
It's the
Download folders.
Yeah, finally just logged out.
You're on time.
Yeah, I was on the regular.
Download.
Right there.
Like, too many times do we leave people left behind in these things. Like, essentially, you fail at that. Like, we want to all be able to do this. Like, have one point where we're all knowledgeable. Not just for fun, because, you know.
There we go. We're talking.
We're moving.
Okay. XML support.
Are you okay too?
Yeah, I just switched.
Oh, it does it.
At that point, while we're waiting, if you want to move forward in your awesome developer connect, you can download. The blind text is one that we all use. Atom is one that looks like this. They're free. I added a really neat plugin to this one that does fireworks while I type, which is like the most insanely impossible thing to use. Because when you really type like that, it makes you crazy. But you know, they're really good editors. Like color. I'll look at code. It helps a lot.
That's in CD space, example dash site.
I think that's
Now we can go back to the GIT page. So, line by line, we're gonna copy. Ignore that one because we already did that. Okay. So do that one.
I can practice it.
Because you're waiting impatiently, you could go into the CSS file. You could change the style. While I do this.
So you just add all those folders, and then you can create
It could be a big compiled one, but you could add your own.
Okay, so you had all those files, and then you made the commit, push it up to GIT. So now, and the history. And we're gonna go to the text.
Oh, so you could like see it?
Yeah, just go to the bottom of that. It's all smashed into one line to make it faster to load. And just go at the end of that one and just start a new line. And then for fun, while we're on here, we can we'll just change that. That is what you can inspect.
That is gonna change the.
Change that. I think
So you
right
can't
there.
do that.
Put it whatever text you get and then hit save. You can do it in the style, but you have to.
In the actual file page.
So, because I had to open up.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring back the source tree.
This one.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't just do that.
So you can. So
You're gonna see how many
like,
they change.
I go to inspect it with my browser because I have no
Yeah.
idea.
It'll show you.
Right.
Hero title.
Yeah.
But in the place there, yeah, you could just open.
It'll show you what you changed and what file changed.
A class of hero title,
But what if it's
hero title,
like purple means something, red means something,
and I can say
you know, in the lines here? In the
Oh,
lines within
well,
here?
the red is deleted line, and the blue line means you added it.
Okay, where's purple?
in that, here. Pretty dang big.
You might be talking about,
Change anything?
I'm not sure, but normally this, when you're looking at changes.
Still pretty big.
Or what you added and what you
Check.
didn't.
Oh, yeah, so you like make a change.
Now you
Yeah,
see
the change.
committed changes, so click on that.
Well, I mean,
the file you
it's all
changed.
clobbered together, so I just wasn't.
And those are the changes
Yeah.
you made,
It's all
line by line.
Ah.
I mean, it looks weird because it's not like a true coding editor. Yeah. So,
You said we can.
I mean, if you want to commit it, you could.
You can have all this.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we got this guy.
Yeah, we finished up.
You want to.
So,
CSS changes, I would go to.
The good distribution.
So commit. There you go.
Yeah.
CSS and then double click. Oh, well.
Oh, here, well,
So this is like
we'll commit our
not
changes.
how you would actually work with CSS.
For
Because
sure.
it's minified, so there's no like
Nice
breaks,
and organized.
nice and organized. So yeah, if you go to the very bottom, somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tried
We'll
to
do our
map
best.
it.
but
Sure, we
we're not
See
leaving
if
this
we
room.
go.
Even if there's a meeting, we'll cancel meetings until we're all to your point. I'm kind of like at a point where I want us to all succeed together,
So
and I feel like
here we'll
it's
work
taking
with
longer. A lot of time we get through 80% of something, we never actually get people past the finish line. So we'll go quickly through the rest, but I want but unfortunately, we're taking a little more.
This is a little harder to reschedule. Time kickoff.
then we
I don't
save that.
I'll get on the phone with a customer, and I will tell them that we're
It would
delayed.
Sourcetree.
It's then gonna say uncommitted
Yeah.
changes.
Got it.
But like,
To here, we
The
changed
one-
0,
if you look
and
around,
here
a
we
lot
added
of things
this
are
H1.
and I said, shut it.
And it just, oh, new line.
Of this.
Uh,
Now, then, we gotta do it again. While we're getting that point together, and Sean's frantically helping Natasha, why don't we go ahead and commit our change? So we made change at the bottom left,
Go through it.
you're gonna see what you changed. So if you change the HTML file, then it's there.
Talking about
You
there.
check the box, it'll move it from unstaged to staged.
Yes.
The bottom.
What's he doing?
You have it checked, that guy.
Since I don't think we have a stage.
That's okay. Just check the thing that says, you may not have the stage stop.
Yours is
already checked.
And then the file check that you want to send back up to the server.
I think you're fine.
Just hit commit your changes on the top left.
So the ones that are checked
Yep.
boxes, the ones that you.
And then it gives you a little box to describe what you did. Updated,
So then he needs to
email
comment,
page, whatever you want to tell people you did.
so saying like, I changed
Change
the
the
title
And then
and
press the box on the bottom left too fast.
What?
That's okay.
Oh.
So
just
there's an option to push it already up to the server
That's
automatically.
offside.
If you didn't check that, you have to press the push button at the top, or there'll be a little number.
Cool, and then you say, can I?
Yep.
Commit, change it.
Oh, no, what have you done?
You did commit? Oh, yeah, so,
Now you
go to the uncommitted changes.
So if anything, you
You're
go
good.
back to that.
Yes, we're good. So commit right up there.
And if you go back to your
You can now go back.
Oh, you need an account.
GitHub
Sure.
repository,
Oh, you do? Okay.
Or
Every time you do a change.
Every one change,
it's gonna give you the end result that you want.
the output that you want. Gotcha. Is there a way you can test it without committing?
Well, it's really like, you're working
You can work
locally,
Oh, okay.
and then push it out, work locally, push it out.
In this case.
Oh,
So now it's like-
yeah, ideally you want to send a message saying, okay, I renamed this,
See what I changed.
changed,
Okay.
I
I told
copied
you that, or
it.
it's too late.
Technically you can. Let's go to history.
Kinda have to keep track of that.
Unless you're logged into
Depends
the version
on-
where
Yeah.
Okay.
it all
Yeah, you could. That's getting some fancy stuff in there.
Okay, so we're gonna run out of time going through this workshop. So how far did everybody get? And what
I'm
questions
not sure.
do you have?
I'm not sure how to do this.
I took down a website.
Practice.
Everything got deleted.
Now you have a
deleted the
repository
database.
that you can demolish, you can create branches in, we can do those kind of more advanced things. We're able to connect one, which you probably almost never would do. We can do a little bit of walkthrough of how to get URL, which I wanna do right now. And you could change a file or see how it's changed, right, if you had to. And you can see what's happened, so you can see I did all of these, and you did all of those. This guy here, and I'll stay longer, but for the people that have to start a new meeting, we can stop, but like, let's say, no. Kennesaw, I can see what Patrick did, I can see where my local copy is one pull behind, and I could pull his change down to mine, so I can have that locally and work on it. I can see everything Patrick did for the entire October 2nd. I can see what files he changed down here on the left and what he actually did. So now I don't have to ask him if he worked on X or Y. I could just come in here and look. Say, oh yeah, well, he did some work. Hey, Fernando did some stuff. You can even, and then down here it tells you what they said they did. Roslana did some stuff. So it's a good thing to know. So when you do want to know what happened and you can't get a hold of somebody, especially because we're working around the clock, you could go look at your project, get the Git URL we're looking at, pull it down, and go from there. this, on our server, this is the GIT URL, this guy here. And if I wanted that one, I could copy it. I can go in my source tree and I can go new from URL. And I can just paste it in here and hit tab, and it will pull it together and tell it a name. You can change this stuff, but you don't need to. And then just hit clone, and then it'll become another thing on your list. It'll pull all the files locally, and you can look through the history like we just did. And even if you don't do anything, you'll have this. So that's pretty great. On Acquia and Pantheon, which is part of this stuff, we'll kind of zip through, and we'll look at. So ours, we make changes, we push the code up, and then a webhook pulls that code down. So when we push stuff, it automatically pulls it on the dev server. Voila, new code is this. On Acquia, same idea, right? Except that we can choose what branch things are on and tag. So when we want to know what it's working on down here, it says dev. Then the guys will pull down 2.1.5. Push code up to do 2.1.5. It automatically pulls it down. So the dev server, voila, code exists. Git URL is here on the site, which we'll go to real quickly. And over here in Pantheon, in the settings, in the connection info here is where the Git URL is. But on theirs, it's not the same. You don't have a lot of choice. You just push it up to the master, it goes to dev. When you're done with dev, you use the UI and you press test and you say pull up from dev, and their system does that. When you want to go live, you go to the live tab and you press a button on it that says give me the code from test. There's not a lot of options. The whole like branching, tagging, you can do whatever you want in a Git repository, but their system doesn't care unless you're going into like a much outside of the scope discussion on multi-dev and stuff like that. You just have a one-track mind. You can only push code up in one way. Do you want to see where it is on Acquia? We'll do that. And what questions do you guys have to begin with? Like, probably you won't use this every day, and maybe try to pull down a Git repository from some of your projects and just see if you have it. You may need to add your SSH key to things, which I already got. So for example here, Charles Drew, go to the Git info tab, boom, there's my Git. I could just add that into that new remote URL. Cool, I got this Charles Drew Git repository, first go, it would show up in here, I probably already have it. Additionally, if you don't have an SSH key put up on Acquia or Pantheon, it's under our account settings, so we have them all in there. That's why sometimes you get emails that say, oh, it says added an SSH key. They have the instructions when you forget how to do it, right there on that learn more link is kind of hidden away. Just follow those instructions for that terminal. We can help you internally. And you can see 8,000 SSH keys. So when the clients are like, why is there so many people's SSH keys? Can you clean them out? You say, no, not for you, because we use them for a ton of other people, and there's a lot of people in our account. Well, why can't you do it the other way? Because this is the way we do it. It's the way it works best for us. Okay.
It's not per site, it's for Pantheon,
It's
for Acquia.
for Acquia. We could have everyone have their individual login. It would be a nightmare for us right now. Pantheon, same thing. They just have to add that SSH key like we did to the other one. We can help you do that if you want those repositories. The dev team is very capable of helping you get through that. What other questions come to mind?
I think it's a lot right now. It's all new. Yeah. So I think.
We're at a stopping point. Is what you're trying to say?
Well, no, I think that just,
Right.
yeah,
It's a lot to getting familiar with it.
what things are doing what. And all of things together.
So, okay, so that, to
I need
me,
like a
sounds
walk.
like we're lost.
Not lost, like I followed everything that you were saying, but I just wanna understand it better and like when and where to do things.
So that's the question. So let's talk about that. So today our goal wasn't to be masters at Git, to not know everything about it. We have a slide deck, we have an entire dev team that can explain it to us. But our goal is to know what it is, kind of know some general terminology, and especially when clients ask us about that. Know that an SSH key is a thing. Know that we can set up a Git repository and put some stuff in it. Not that we can do it every day, and not that we're experts at it. And we know that we use Git with all of our stuff and our hosting, and how it kind of works. Not that we have to be super experts at it, not that you have to do this every day, not that you have to change a file even. That's kind of above and beyond. But now, is that stuff kind of in your brain? Is it okay that we are aware of what Git is and how it might operate?
Yeah, everything you said made sense
Yeah.
conceptually, and
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you did it, nothing was like, why do you do that? So I think
Right.
those things were all hit, and now it's cool that I actually know what the hell people are talking about on calls.
That's
Helps
the
a
goal.
lot.
That's
So-
all we're looking for here is that. We're not looking for you to be awesome at it, overwhelm yourself with what possibly could happen in Git, what a branch is gonna be, what a tag is. In reality, I just want you to absorb those words. That's what we're looking for today. And I think that's more of where we feel uncomfortable, is when we get outside of that in our training, because it is somewhat technical. We don't need to know it all. We just need to be aware that we don't know it all, and are aware of these words and the things we might touch. That's what I want us to walk away from today. And then even it's nice to have your computer set up where you could go do more, and you could dig in, and if you're invested in that project, get the research of what's happening. I don't care if you can't do that, totally cool. You don't need to do that. We can still follow our traditional approach, but this helps a ton as long as this basic stuff is there. That's what we set out to achieve today, just to kind of reverse it back. So our mindset walking out of here is that we're aware of Git, and we're aware of how it touches servers. And I could probably grab one if I needed to.
So I think for us, right, like moving forward, maybe have, like, chew on it a little bit and then have like a follow-up meeting, like what is the meaning for us?
Yeah, exactly. Just like expectations of, you know.
Yeah, or just like a review of, this is what we learned.
Yeah,
To make
We're
sure we're
just
all on
going
the same
over it.
page and,
Yeah.
and like create documentation maybe for like when somebody else comes in as a TM and it's like, Carrie, learn about it a little bit.
Start
walk through
building
this,
websites.
Yeah, or we could do this training, and we have a recording today.
Yeah, I was
We
gonna
could
say
do more of
recording
that.
might be helpful.
Right.
You could go back in the video, look at it, like, you guys can still meet your meeting need, but like,
Right.
at the end of the day, we're not here to be masters at it. We're here to be aware of it.
Right.
And that's the important piece. How you take it in your daily life and transition that to some tool you use, is however you choose to go with it. The devs are required to use it, but at least we have knowledge of the terminology and the capabilities. That's really all we're looking for. Right on.
Yeah,
Okay,
Really helpful.
thank you. That's,
Thank you.
Stop it at that point, people do the normal thing.
Thank you.
Natasha, if you need help, I think Sean's right on point. Okay.
All right, bye everyone.